Apple thinks that your MacBook has an unacceptable level of malware, and I think I know why. So let's go ahead together, as a people of course, and take it out! And welcome to another sensational Sunday. I'm Mike, and this week we're going to talk a little bit about the Apple versus Epic case. But before we talk about Apple and this MacBook thing, I have an update from the one and only Santa Claus about last week's news video regarding the PS5 possibly being sold out until 2022. And he basically said, no way, there'll be more just in time for Christmas. And I'm glad, because if Santa Claus can get those PS5s to the kids and we can all get PS5s to be happy, that's all that matters in the world, is bringing joy around Christmas time. All right, with that out of the way, let's take our sleigh over to Apple land and let's talk about this whole MacBook thing. So, if you're not aware, Apple and Epic are in court right now. I covered it in previous videos, but basically Epic is suing Apple because Fortnite got pulled from the App Store because they tried to use their own payment source. And they're basically saying that Apple has a monopoly and it's not fair that they get to charge 30% and decide who gets to be on their platform. And pretty much that it should be an open platform. They should be allowed to put their own app or App Store up there. That's basically what the lawsuit is about. So I haven't covered it much since it started because I'm really waiting until the end because I want to get all the information and do a really long video about it. Like I want to do maybe like an hour-long video, like from start to finish, about the whole situation, because I've never done a video like that before and I think it'll be cool. So I'm kind of waiting for everything to finish with the trial, including the results, which probably won't be until August when they're done deliberating on the verdict. But in the meantime, there is one thing that I want to talk about that happened this week from the trial, and that's because it kind of has implications of where Apple may be going in the future. And I'm talking about when Craig Federighi took the stand. If you don't know him, he's the guy with the hair, that one that was peeking into the MacBook. I'm gonna put up the picture so y'all can see what I'm talking about. That guy, yeah, him. So he took the stand this week. And basically Apple's whole defense is the benefit of having a closed ecosystem. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because he literally said that the level of malware on macOS is unacceptable. Like it's basically in comparison to the iPhone, where they have complete control over the ecosystem because everyone downloads everything from the App Store pretty much. You do have the option to add web apps, like for instance Amazon Luna is a web app. You can't download it from the App Store because Apple's policies on gaming doesn't allow streaming apps unless each game is individually rated. But I've been over that before too. So for the most part, people would download stuff from the App Store, and Apple decides who's going to be in the App Store, so of course there's less chances of like malware and viruses, etc. being on the iPhone. Not that it doesn't happen, there's just less of a chance than on macOS, where they do have an App Store, but people can just go to a website and download the app. So when I initially heard that, I thought it was kind of weird, but then I thought further into it and I was like, why would someone at Apple say that, especially someone higher up in the company? It's not like they're making a public statement in their defense. This is something that they're saying, under oath in court, but they already knew leading up to this, like everything from the court battle has been leaking out. So whatever was said in court was going to get leaked if it was anything that was like juicy. And this was kind of juicy to me, and it's basically because I think that this directly points to where they want to go in the future. So for one thing, Apple's always touted how Macs have less viruses than Windows PCs, and that's even been a selling point to them. Like they put that in their advertisements before. And there's a good reason that they have less viruses, or generally have had less viruses and malware, and that's just because they have less of a market share than Windows does. Like Windows is everywhere, and there's a lot of people that have Macs, but it's significantly less than the amount of computers that are in the world that run Windows, and there's just less viruses and malware being written for Mac OS. So that's why they had less viruses. So it was never like, oh, it's more secure, so there's less viruses. There's just less people trying to attack it because it's a smaller market. So of course this has been a thing for a long time. And like I said, it makes sense with the closed ecosystem on the iPhone and the iPad. You can pretty much only install stuff from the App Store. So why do I think that this is a big deal, that he said the level of malware on macOS is unacceptable? And obviously you can argue that this was being said in court to prove that having this closed ecosystem is an advantage. So it might just mean nothing. It might just be a defense that they're doing for court, which obviously it is. But everything that the higher ups at Apple say is very calculated. They wouldn't say anything that they didn't want to get out to the public and create a bad perception of their product. So why do you think, knowing that this was probably going to leak out of the court battle, why do you think Craig Federighi would say that, knowing that it would probably get leaked? And I think it's just that they want people to move to iOS and iPad. Yeah, they literally just released their new M1 iMac and they're moving all their stuff over to Apple Silicon. But I think a large part of it is obviously to make it easier to cross-develop apps for iOS and iPad and the Mac. But I think they want the iPad to really be the future of computing. They've already said that. And I think that this year, like, there's been speculation going on and people wanting this now that the new iPads are running the M1 chip, to bring some of those Mac apps over to the iPad, especially now that it has mouse support. I think this is basically them planting the seed, or at least saying that this is the direction they're going in, to be like, hey, the Mac, your MacBook is less secure, you should get an iPad. And then on the iPad, they control the whole ecosystem. Everything has to be downloaded from that store. And that's basically it. They're getting all the revenue from any apps that are up there. It's going to be safer, sure, it'll be safer because they're vetting pretty much every app that's on the operating system, but of course there's also going to be less choice. It's going to be less open. It might be harder for smaller developers to get their apps on the iPad if that becomes Apple's primary computer. But I don't think that it was unintentional that he said the level of malware was unacceptable. It could also be that they plan on closing down macOS and making it so you can only install apps from the App Store. Of course, they've already made it a little bit more difficult to do that to begin with. Like if you try to install like an app from a website, like you got to go to your security settings and change those. But, you know, what if they just take that away? But I don't think that they're going to do that completely because people are just used to using a computer like that. But if you think about when we first started using phones, even on Android, like the default thing was just to go to that store and download the app. People aren't used to like side-loading apps. They're going to the website and downloading things like they were on a computer. So that behavior is already there on phones and tablets. If Apple starts moving their desktop apps over to the iPad, where the behavior is to go to the App Store and download everything, I think ultimately that's what they want. And then on top of that, if we look at the specs for the new iPad, literally it starts off, if you get the lower storage models, it's 8 gigs of RAM and an M1 chip, the same as the MacBook Air and the current MacBook Pro, the 13-inch. And then if you go up to the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte storage options, it actually has 16 gigs of RAM. So they're matching the MacBooks spec for spec with the iPad right now. And the only way that this really makes sense is if they're planning fairly soon to bring those Mac apps over to the iPad Pro. So I think that, yes, this was done intentionally as a defense to Apple as to why their closed ecosystem is better. But I think that they also knew that this was going to leak out to the public, and they do want to create some doubt and move buyers over to their closed ecosystem where they make more money from the App Store and they control the whole experience, even more than they do on macOS. Also, I think that they'll continue to sell Macs because there's still a market for it, but they expect that market to shrink and everything to go to iPhone and iPad within the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's what they're planning. I think that they're going to leave the Macs alone. They're still going to, update them or whatever, but the MacBook and the Mac lineup is not their main focus. I really think that it's going to be the iPad and iPhone. And of course, the iPad and iPhone have been selling gangbusters. So why would they focus on their computers? Of course, they want everybody to move over to iPad and iPhone because they make so much more revenue off the store, even if the products are overall cheaper. Even if people buy like a $4,000 MacBook, how much are they going to monetize for them using the store? People barely use the store on the MacBook. So yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. So that's my tinfoil hat speculation about the whole Craig Federighi thing. So I think Apple's intentionally sowing seeds of doubt in the people that are thinking about buying a MacBook, and they're like, you know what, maybe I should go buy an iPad. But I think to tie it all together, we'll have to see what they announce at WWDC this year. I'm really hoping that they bring some of those apps over to the iPad finally, because that'll be enough for me to upgrade my iPad Pro. Like, if they don't bring those apps over, I'm not getting the M1 iPad Pro, no matter how much faster it is than my 2018, because at that point, I don't have any use for the speed. If they bring over Logic, which is literally the only reason I have a MacBook, I'm trading in the MacBook, I'm trading in my iPad, and I'm getting the new iPad Pro, and that's the only Apple computer that I'm going to have in the house. I do 90% of my stuff on my Windows computer, so it is what it is. Like, I really don't need a super powerful Mac. So I really do hope that they bring those apps over to the iPad, because that'd be really cool. but also if they're using this as an excuse to try to close off the Mac ecosystem or phase out the Mac in favor of the iPad, that does really suck. I'm not in favor of that. Like, if I buy a computer, it's because I want to be able to do whatever I want to on it, versus like a tablet or a phone. I want to be able to install whatever applications or use whatever workarounds I need to. And closing up that ecosystem is really going to make it a lot more difficult for people to use this for professional work if they need to. So I really hope it doesn't go that way, but that's just kind of my speculation on the whole thing. But let me know what you think. Do you think that this was simply just Craig Federighi trying to win this case? Or do you think that Apple as a whole is trying to sow a seed that it's better to have an iPad versus having a MacBook? And with that being said, I'm bringing this video to a close. But if you enjoyed it, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and always do at least 2 things at the same time.